All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Alignment Recess Live. I am Tiffany Lauren Jones. I am the founder of Alignment Recess and your guide in this space where we explore how to lead from alignment, not just ambition. And today's episode is for anyone who's ever hit all the external milestones but felt empty, tired, or misaligned underneath it all, which I can absolutely relate to. I am joined today by Chazz Scott. He is an author, speaker, and mindset and leadership coach who helps ambitious leaders escape burnout, reclaim their energy, and redefine success from the inside out. Chaz is the founder of Supramentum and the executive director of Positively Caviar Incorporated, where he leads conversations that bridge achievement with inner wellness. He's also the author of Success Starts Within, which is a very powerful guide to radical self-care for high achievers. I think we can all use that. And his work has also been featured in Forbes, Black Enterprise, CBS News, and Thrive Global. He's worked with organizations like the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce and the D.C. Hospital Association to create more sustainable, human-centered leadership from the inside out. So if you are done performing strength and ready to build success that actually feels good, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Chaz. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Thanks, Tiffany. I'm very excited to be here. I think this is going to be a really good discussion.
Absolutely. I'm very excited. You've obviously been very busy building your mission, which is incredible. I would love to start with telling me today, what does alignment feel like for you right now? Because what I've learned is that alignment happens in layers. When I first started going on my alignment journey 7 years ago, when I left corporate, I thought once I had the awareness that more was possible, that was it. Okay, I know now and I'm just aligned. And I've learned the very hard way that over time, it's really an ongoing refinement process. And my definition of alignment has changed. For you today, what does alignment look like for you?
That's a really good question. So I think for me today, I'm thinking about this morning. So one of the things that I'm doing daily is being mindful of how, like, the stress in my life and how to manage stress
Right.
as well as my habits. So in the morning, I have a strict morning routine, which we could talk about a little later, but having mornings that really fill up my cup before I head into the work day or before I give my energy to anybody else, I really guard that morning time just for myself because I
Wow.
realize that before I can give anything to anybody else, I have to give to myself. So alignment looks like patience and grace. Alignment looks like joy and happiness, not from just achieving things, just living life in general. How can I be joyful without having the urge to achieve something? And that's one of the things I had to get over as well. So alignment is such a critical word, especially for high achievers who are constantly have that unconscious urge to achieve. And then they realize, oh, we achieved it, but my life isn't fulfilled or I'm stressed.
Absolutely. You mentioned something that I'm still working on, even though I teach it, which is how to really let go of that desire to achieve. I haven't mastered that yet. How are you able to get to a point where you said, you know what, whether I achieve or not, I'm happy, I'm okay? Because even if I'm in my rest, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go repot my plants today. I've done something, right? And I go through seasons, but overall, long term, I haven't yet mastered letting go of that feeling. I'm like, I got to cook something, I got to do something. So, how do you do that? How do you get to that space?
I can tell you I'm a work in progress too. I'm no
Mhm.
expert, but there have been things that I've been doing to implement practices to help. I'll tell you a story real quick. I went to Portugal a couple of weeks ago. It was my first time overseas and it was a 10-day solo
Oh,
trip. And I absolutely loved it. I used Chat GPT to actually write my 10-day schedule and it was a great trip. But one of the things that I noticed was I flew into Lisbon, had an Airbnb right downtown by the water. And the next day I said to myself, I have a full day. I don't have to work. I don't have to achieve anything. And there's no podcast. There's no book. There's nothing that I need to do. I'm going to
right.
enjoy my life. Tiffany, when I woke up at 5 a.m., My nervous system said, oh no, you need to run, you need to meditate, you need to have your morning routine, you need to read. My nervous system was already set for like achievement. I need to
Right.
do something. And I noticed it was very interesting. I noticed how I had to recognize that kind of bubbling up to the surface. And I said to myself, Chaz, what are you doing? You already made the conscious decision to slow down. You have nothing to do today. There's no deadline. There's nothing you need to achieve. Stop it. Stop it. It's interesting because it's almost like our nervous systems, especially if you're a first generation American, if you're a minority, especially if you're a woman, especially if you live in the Washington, D.C. area or any city, there's that unconscious drive to succeed and achieve. And I think it's important. I do think it's important because it raises our level of standard, lets us ensure that we adequately reach our potential. But
Right.
then it gets to a certain point where it is not sustainable anymore and the route needs to be shifted or changed.
Right.
And that's what I got to that point. Back to the Portugal story, when I woke up in the morning, I said I was going to take the train at 10:30 to Centra. I did my morning routine. I woke up, I ran, I meditated, then I read for 20 minutes. Okay. And all of a sudden, I'm going to miss the train. I'm going to mess up my day. And all of a sudden, I started to get anxiety on vacation. And I was like, oh, I got to get the Uber. I got to get the Lyft. And I walked outside and I got into the Lyft or the Uber. And then I realized I'd left my wallet back in the house.
Oh, no.
And I was like, okay, I can't do that. Let me go back upstairs. And when I got back upstairs, I was like, Chaz, if you missed the 10:30 a.m. train, take the 11. Stop doing this to yourself.
Right.
Enjoy your life. Stop putting this pressure and anxiety on yourself because all you're doing is making yourself upset and stress and cortisol hormones are released into your body. It doesn't help you. Anyway, I say all that to say I'm working on it myself. Of course, I coach entrepreneurs and leaders to assist with it, but I noticed it when I go on vacations and when I go overseas a lot too.
So it's not necessarily eliminating the feeling, but it's managing it and noticing in your body when it's coming up and in certain maybe environments where you feel more stress, more anxiety, or more of that feeling of I need to do to check in with self, to have the self awareness to say, okay, we're doing it again. Let's take a step back. Let's relax, maybe do some mindful breathing or whatever it is that is helpful. And maybe the run is what's going to help you to get back to that state, but then you let go of the anxiety about the train balance. And because even you can put pressure on yourself, I think sometimes we talk about alignment and we talk about even things like success starting from within, people call it woo, or we think about the meditations and the yoga and all of that. And those are helpful tools, but that can also become stressful as well if you're pressuring yourself to swing so far outside of what you're used to. And then I'm not even relaxing. I do that too. My mentor laughed at me. I do every 6 months, I try to do a sabbatical of some sort. So even if it's a weekend or if I have the luxury of taking a month off. And when I was first pivoting my business about 2 years ago, she was like, okay, you're going to take 30 days and you're just going to go into a rest period. And I literally printed out, here's my agenda. And she was like, throw it away immediately. She was like,
That's funny.
you made an agenda on how to relax. And I was like, I did. And I was like, okay, day one, I'm going to journal and I'm going to do this and this. And she was like, please stop. So I
That's so
love
funny.
I love what you said about just checking in with yourself, because even in that moment, I was still soothing that need to be productive, but I hadn't yet developed the self-awareness to say, hey, you're still doing it, because it felt so natural and comfortable to me. So I love that you have a process in place for you to say, hey, stop doing that and to
Yeah.
reset.
No, I'm glad that you brought that up because you bring up a key word is awareness. The more that you learn and discover yourself, you have mentors, you have coaches, you read certain books, you listen to certain podcasts like this, you start to have more awareness of how your nervous system does change throughout the day.
Right.
And you have tools to help support you. Before I did this podcast, I had a little state of nervousness or anxiety. So what did I do? I do a quick breathwork exercise.
Yeah.
So you have tools to fall back on. And I'm glad that you brought up the point of, I think within the wellness community and the self-help culture, that it's just so much information out there. the air's bad, no GMO, no gluten. You could name a list of things. Don't
Right.
drink the water. Don't breathe air. So the point is sometimes it can become a lot, but I think figuring out what works for you. And I think you brought up the term woo. At this point in time, I don't care what people call it. If it works for me and my life is getting better, I'm going to use it. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell my clients when I work with them. I said, I don't care what you've been taught previously. I'm going to teach you some new things. And if they work for you and your life gets better, use it because your life is meant to be joyful and your life is meant to be as happy as it can be.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy you said that, especially for all the woo-woo people, because I had to work with a coach to help me get past that fear. If I really talk about what I do and the spiritual side of all my work, I had this huge fear of all the woo-woo haters coming out and being, well, I think this doesn't make any sense. But exactly what you said is true. It's really about doing what works for you and not caring what other people think about it. Because I think part of the mindset of high achievers is typically sometimes it can be image based. And a lot of it is about I'm performing because of how it looks, or I want to be perceived as someone who is successful and doing well. There can come with that a lot of blockers around doing what's actually best for you. And there's a stigma around even slowing down of, am I going to look lazy? Am I going to look like I'm not a serious person? And so I love that you said that about do what works for you. Who cares what they call it? Who cares what it looks like? Because it's making you a better person and happier, most importantly, which is the whole purpose of, I think, achieving, anyways. The whole goal, sometimes we forget, is to be happy and to find that joy and to have freedom. So I would love to hear, Chaz, a little bit about your origin story. Tell us how you got to this point. What was your life like before you found success from within?
Yeah. Let me first start off with terms of like how I grew up. I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and my father was in the United States Air Force and he flew B-52 Navigator. So he flew on like these big bomber planes. So we moved around a lot. I lived in
Wow.
Colorado Springs, lived in Virginia, and then currently now I live in the Washington, D.C. area in Virginia. The whole point behind that story is I grew up with the unconscious drive to succeed and achieve. Especially as a Black American, you know that your ancestors have sacrificed for you. Your parents have worked hard to put you in a position of where you are now. So I
Right.
always had that unconscious drive to succeed. So I went down to Hampton University. I studied computer science, got my master's in cybersecurity, and I really had this deep urge to be in the tech space. And I still love the tech space. One of the things I started to realize was once I ventured out into the workforce, I was still on that drive to succeed. And this was back in 2017. And I wrote about it in my book. I had a full-time job. I was building a nonprofit to support youth mental wellness workshops in the
Mhm.
Baltimore and DC area, Positively Caviar, which you talked about. And I realized I was working hard to climb the ladder, build a nonprofit, trying to be a significant other, trying to wear all these hats. I was working harder professionally, but my inner life was not getting better. And that's when I realized something's wrong. Something is wrong with what I've been taught. And that sent me on a journey to read every book I could in personal development, spirituality, positive psychology, you name it, I probably read it. And what's interesting during that time in 2017, I remember reading a book titled Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, which is like my all time favorite book. I read it in Hampton and it changed my life. It taught me that I have control over my circumstances, or I know that my thoughts can influence my destiny. And when I remembered thinking back to that book and where I was in 2017, I said, wait a minute, is there any validity to this? And that's when I started really diving deep into the sciences because I'm a science person.
Right.
And then that led to me discovering more spirituality and understanding how the universe works and understanding
Mhm.
the connection between wellness and achievement. And I started to realize that your mind, body, and soul, when it's out of alignment, there's you don't know who you are. You do not know who you are when you are out of alignment with yourself. And I started implementing, I call them success practices, which I talk about in the book, that really give me the joy, the energy, the alignment. And I always tell people, Tiffany, when I do like seminars and coaching, I said, what's the point of working so hard, You're climbing up this mountain. You get to the peak of the mountain. Not only have you been climbing the wrong mountain, but you haven't been enjoying the journey. What's the point? I started to say to myself, wait a minute, I'm going to enjoy my life. I'm going to live a healthy life and I'm going to give and serve others. And that was that switch that changed within me, which led me to start doing more leadership and development coaching as it relates to burnout and success. And the work that I do now when I do speaking engagements to corporations.
Incredible. So you went on a whole journey. You switched mountains.
Yeah.
You switched mountains, but you talked about the switch that happened. I want to hear a little bit more about that because I know so many people listening and that engage with probably your audience and mine as well. They see that there's a different life that can be had, right? They want more joy, they want more freedom, they still want the success. But I've noticed that there's a point where people have a lot of fear that comes up about the idea of letting go of what they have now. It's almost like that analogy. And don't laugh at me because my clients always tell me analogies are not my strength, but let's try. I'm bragging. You guys can practice with me. But like when you have your hand closed, right? Lauren Hayes, we did a live with her. She said it beautifully. You know, when you have your hand closed and you're holding on so tightly to something, you really can't allow for the new to come in. And so people let that fear hold them back from making that change, from making such a radical shift in their life. And I know for me, it did take a lot of energy to make that transition and a lot of resources, quite frankly. So for you, what was it that happened within you? What was that internal switch that said, I'm willing to make the sacrifice to make this leap, to switch mountains, if you will, regardless of if I lose anything. How did you do that pivot without letting the fear keep you where you were? Because people will have the awareness, but they'll stay. They'll keep climbing that same mountain because they feel like they have to.
I think that's such a good question, Tiffany. And I think this really goes back. I can speak personally. I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I got to a point where in 2017, I was falling asleep at the wheel on 495 in DC, coming to and from work at an hour-long commute. I was waking up sweating, fearful, anxiety throughout my body throughout the day. And it's interesting when you start reading these personal development books, it really expands your awareness about what's possible for you in your life. And that's why I think books are so critical to the human psyche and our soul because it lets us know that there is another life out there. And when I started reading these books, I said, wait a minute, I can live like this? Wait a minute, I can be joyful and happy all day? Everybody around me is upset on 495 in traffic. Where are the people that are happy? Where are the people that are energetic? Where are the people that are waking up excited about their day and heading into their day? I want to find those people. So it's interesting that you say that. I got to a point where I realized that there is another life. And I started finding that out through books. And then I intentionally started putting myself around those people that had a balanced life, that were enjoying their life. I started to understand their habits. I started to understand their practices. And I realized that many successful people, especially, from celebrity space, CEOs, there are a set of practices that keep them balanced, that keep them happy, that keep them energetic, that keep them productive.
Right.
And I started to learn that, use it. And, it's so interesting, Tiffany, my life got better. And once I got a little taste of that, I was like, oh, I need more of that. And once you get a little taste, right? We're not talking about you have to jump all in and change everything. Just setting 10 minutes or 5 minutes aside to read a personal development book in the morning, setting
Right.
5 minutes aside before you head into your job and do a quick breath work or meditation or prayer. This isn't anything that you have to do to change your life drastically. But one thing that I can tell you with my clients, my coaching clients, as well as myself, you build momentum. And as you start to build momentum, your life gets better. You start waking up and enjoying life. You start knowing how to manage stress more effectively. And then you start drawing energetic people that are of that same alignment. And you start to create magical things with other people.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. It reminds me of something that I believe to be true, which is all energy, right? So I think when you have the self-awareness to realize, hey, something's off here, I'm not happy, and to have an open mind to believe that something else is possible, and you start picking up those little clues. The Alchemist is a book that really changed my life. And I feel like books find me when I'm meant to read them. I had a friend who had been telling me to read The Alchemist for years, all the years I was in corporate complaining about not wanting to be there anymore. And it wasn't until I actually left corporate and the book appeared again, I said, okay, I'm going to read it now. And when I did, of course, I had that moment where I wish I had read this sooner, but I wouldn't have been ready to receive what the book spoke to. I wouldn't have gotten it. And so I say that to say what I picked up from what you mentioned is that it only takes one book, right? And then oh my gosh, because it's like your mind opens like the lotus, right? And then it's an energy that you've now, I'd say, experienced, and you want a little bit more of that taste of energy, but also energetically it shifts your frequency, right? And when you start to shift your mindset, you're really expanding your consciousness. And when you expand your consciousness, you're open to new ideas, you start adopting new beliefs, you start shifting your energy in alignment with the person and the version of you that can experience that joy, that freedom, and that success in a way that feels really good to you. Reading is fundamental. Education and getting out there and seeing what else is possible starts to help you believe that it can be possible for you too.
I'm glad that you brought up that point about The Alchemist in terms of you heard the book and you didn't read it until you were ready to receive. Same thing with Power of Positive Thinking. When I read it in college, I had heard about it, but once I heard it a third time, I said, oh, there's a message from the universe. There's a message from God that I need to read this book. And it changed my life. So that's a message to anybody that's listening. If you've heard a book over and over again and you have not read it, this is your message to go read that book.
Read it. This is the sign. Yes. Awesome. So, speaking of books, success starts within. Tell us about your book. I know it's a guide. What would you say you want people to know most about your book? What type of person needs to read it?
Yeah. So I think uh, I talked a little bit about why I wrote it in terms of my story in 2017 when I was burnt out, depressed, and basically waking up to a job that was just paying the bill. And I
Right.
realized I needed to change. And during that course of about 2.5, 3 years, I completely transformed my life. And I started to implement practices and things that actually assisted in helping improve the quality of my life. So the whole goal of the book is really to help people understand that there is an intersection between wellness and achievement. And if you take care of yourself, achievement gets easier, success comes easier, but not only that, you enjoy the journey. And I talk about many studies in there from neuroscience to positive psychology that actually support this. And ancient wisdom has always known this. We've been meditating for thousands of years. The reason why we meditate is to ensure that we are in alignment to ourselves. We know how to manage
Right.
stress and we know how to balance our nervous system. Okay, what does the Western science say? Oh, wow, if you meditate, you can spin down your fight or flight nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, and spin up your parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest nervous system. My goodness, the terms that we're using now, even though we didn't have a term for it back thousands of years ago, we know that there's practices that can help us improve the quality of our lives. And this book helps to illuminate that and to give you simple practices daily. I'll give you a quick sort of study, specifically like with exercise. I think exercise is pretty important. So for me, I run every morning or do some type of cardio in the morning. But the point is, they did this study 2007, a group of German scientists wanted to understand how exercise and aerobic exercise actually improves your mental faculties, your concentration, your focus. So they took two groups of people. One group of people learned new vocabulary words before working out. The other group learned new vocabulary words after working out. The group of people that learned the new vocabulary words after working out learned those new vocabulary words 20% faster. So what
Wow.
am I saying? I'm saying people are like, I don't have enough time to work out. I don't have enough time to take care of myself. Here's the thing. If you work out and take care of yourself first, you achieve your goals faster. You get smarter. You're able to achieve more. There's something that's released into the brain after you do aerobic exercise called brain derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which is basically miracle growth for your brain. Your brain is working more optimally so you can think sharper and to do your best work. So, one of the things I always tell my clients is if you got a presentation or a paper that you got to write, work out first. And after the workout, do that hard task right after the workout because your mind is optimally is working very well right after that work. It's optimized. It's a cheat code.
That's
All of
incredible.
this stuff is a cheat code. And
Yes.
I did tons of research in the book that support this. And I think it's important for us to utilize it and to start to get these cheat codes to have a better life.
Absolutely. I love that you talk about the science behind all of this because there's so much that goes into operating these machines that are our bodies that we don't even know about. You don't really learn about it in school. We maybe learn some basics, like we know that we have PE, right? In elementary school, you know that you're supposed to exercise, but you don't really get into the benefits of exercise, I believe, outside of basic nutrition and health, unless you take a special class, which even then, unless you study it and you really are looking into that line of work, we don't come with a manual. We never really understand the power of our mind. I think our minds are so much more powerful than what we're told, our bodies. And there's a lot hidden about the realities of what is possible for us if we're able to really optimize ourselves in the way that you said, and not always for aesthetics or to be more productive, but really to create a reality for yourself that allows you to enjoy the experience that you're having here on earth, as I like to say, the human experience that you're having during your time here on earth. What do you want to look back and see? One of my biggest motivators is regret. And so I always have this vision of myself like 95 years old, I don't know, sitting on a porch somewhere. And when I look back on my life, I want to feel like I did the best I could, but that I enjoyed myself. And whenever I find myself getting out of alignment, because sometimes it ebbs and flows in different seasons, and it's a practice, just like working out. If you don't go to the gym consistently, the next time you go to lift some weight, you may not be able to lift the 20 pounds. You got to start back at 5, right? And so alignment is the same thing. It's an ongoing refinement process. But I find that it's really interesting what's possible for you when you understand the power of your body, but also your mind and your spirit, because they all really do go together.
Ever so.
You talk about the rise and the reclaim blueprint. This is your framework around transformation. What are some of the stages someone moves through when they begin reclaiming their energy? I've talked about the process of refinement, but there's a lot that comes with transformation. And sometimes that's the point where people turn around and they're like, this is so different. I'm so outside of my comfort zone. What are some of the stages that people go through? And what's one practical or energetic shift you recommend if they feel themselves getting stuck?
Okay, perfect. I love this. And just to add in terms of what you said previously, I think with the book and my program, one of the things that I'm trying to assist people with is changing or redefining what success actually means. So achievement and getting to your goal, I think that's all fun, but it's more fun to enjoy the journey towards the goal and also know how to manage stress because we know things are going to pop up and we have to understand how to maneuver and, like you said, use this body. So
Right.
what I always say to people is success and achievement isn't it's not this chasing. We got to stop chasing. What I've determined, what I talk about in the book is it ensues as a byproduct of well-being. Success ensues as a byproduct of well-being because if you take care of yourself, you think sharper, you feel good, your soul's in alignment, and law of attraction, that stuff just comes to you.
Yeah.
In the program specifically, I'm glad you brought it up. I have a 90-day program that basically helps individuals escape burnout, emerge, and elevate. It's a three-phase program, and it really takes you from burnt out and drained to energized and flow. And I put a lot of thought in this program because it was something that I experienced and I wish I had And a lot of the clients that come to me that are interested in this is either they're sick and tired of being sick and tired and they're looking for a way out, or
Mhm.
they've achieved a lot of success, but they don't know how to sustain it and they don't know how to manage their stress and their habits. So those are the two clients that come to me and they're looking to achieve more. And it's very interesting when you take people through this program. You're right. It is a change in habit. Actually a change in belief system. I started doing a lot of study on this. And one of the things I realized is there is this unconscious lie that we've been telling ourselves,
Mhm.
which is if I work harder, put in more hours, my life will get better. It's not true. I think to a certain extent, it helps you to rise above your circumstances, but you'll
Right.
get to a threshold where it's not true anymore and you have to make a shift. So, one of the first things that I talk about in my program is unmasking the hustle lie. We focus so much on doing well that we don't even know how to be. And this is shifting the underlying belief. And I actually have a name for it. It's called sacrificial guilt syndrome, which I believe that a lot of us, especially if you're first generation American, if you're a minority, if you're a woman who've been taught that you have to work 10 times harder than everybody else in the room, we have this unconscious drive to succeed because of what our ancestors have been through and what our family have been through. Even if you come from a blue collar family, you know that there's people that have sacrificed for where you are. So that hustle drive is there. And I think it's important. However, it gets to a certain point where the threshold you have to change. And if you don't, you'll run yourself into the ground. Hence the new was hence the new buzzword burnt out.
Mhm.
And before we didn't have a term to describe burnt out. People would say, my blood pressure is rising, or I got to take blood pressure medicine, or I'm stressing and I'm waking up sweating in the morning with anxiety. We
Yeah.
didn't have terminology to describe this. Now we do. So you're right. It is a shuttle shift, but one of the best practices that I can offer for anybody is a simple breath work exercise, which is in my
Mhm.
program as well as in my book. Many people use the 4-7-8 breath work exercise,
Yeah.
what I'm sure you're aware of. And what I talk about in the book is the stop hustling, start aligning breath work exercise. And it's very simple, which is ensuring that your exhales are longer than your inhales. And what does that
Mhm.
do? It sends a set signal to the vagus nerve and it slows down your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight nervous system, and spins up your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest. And what you begin to notice is you influence your body, which then influences your thoughts to release the anxiety, to release the fear, and you start to become more in alignment to yourself and your body.
Yeah.
I just did this breathwork exercise just now before we got on this podcast. And I regularly speak with Fox 5 when I talk about mindset and resilience. And I was on the elevator heading up. This was in Bethesda, there's a studio in Bethesda, and it was 7 a.m. And I was coming up the elevator and I noticed my breath starting to get really shallow. And I said,
Mhm.
wait a minute, I'm about to be in front of potentially thousands of people. I don't know it, but they're on camera somewhere. They're looking at me. I got to get my act together. So what did I do? I leaned on a tool that I knew how to take care of myself. I leaned on the breathwork exercise
Right.
and I used it, got right back in the state, felt great, felt in alignment, knew what I was going to say, and I felt good throughout. So that's what we want to get to. We want to get to a point in life where we have tools that we can use to manage our stress and then achieve, but also enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. I love that. Breathwork has been so helpful for me as someone who I feel had at some point crippling anxiety. Even as a high achiever or high performer behind the scene, honey, there were moments where I was like, and just really needed some tools to help to calm my mind and my body. And a lot of the women that I work with, the same thing is happening to them, whether they have $1 million business or they're just starting out externally, they're appearing as very calm, very collected, very successful. But behind the scenes in some of our conversations, they're freaking out because there's so much subconscious beliefs that I think really are tied to identity around achievement and attaching yourself to, okay, if I go on the news and I mess up, I'm a failure. It's not, there was a mistake that was made. I've now failed publicly. And so you're also resetting and believing that, okay, it's really, if you do mess up, it's okay. But also having that tool ahead of time is helpful to save yourself from that experience and just say, okay, everything everything is fine. Everything is fine. It's okay.
Everything is fine.
Yes, everything is fine. And if it's not fine, sometimes it always will be. You can always reset and get yourself back to center. So, I have something fun I'd like to do with you, Chaz. I think you're up for it. This is our first time doing it. It is rapid fire recess. It's just a quick reflection round. There are 4 questions here I'm going to ask you. You can give me your rapid fire answer. We'll move through, and then I have a final word for our listeners, and we'll close out our conversation for today. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. A belief that you had to unlearn to grow.
If I work harder professionally, my life will get better.
Perfect. What's currently restoring your energy?
Relationships, friends and family.
Beautiful. Favorite quote or mantra?
Favorite
This
quote,
is a tough one.
my inner reality creates outer form.
That's a good one. That could be a full episode. Okay. We're going to get into that, the metaphysics of things. What helps you recalibrate when you've lost clarity? We know breathing.
Breath work, but I want to make it hard on myself. So I would say spending time in nature.
So good. I loved your stories, especially when you were in Portugal, sharing with us your journey. Portugal is just so gorgeous, but I see you do a lot of things in nature and just, you know what, reminds me to get outside more. Okay, that's the end of our rapid fire recess. You did great. Thank you so much.
That was great.
Yeah. So, final word for our listeners today 2 things, of course, how to connect with you. But before that, if someone is listening and they feel really overwhelmed, behind, or disconnected, what would you want them to know outside of what you've already shared? What's something that you want them to know today?
And I have to put myself in their shoes when I think back to when where I was at that time. So I think my main message is to give people hope, let people know that there are resources out there to improve the quality of your life. And whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's listening to this podcast or finding a mentor, your life can get better. There are people that wake up in the morning that are excited about life. You can go through life with ease and flow. You can enjoy your life every single day and you can manage your stress every single day. So my main point is to give people hope. And I think there's a lot of information and resources out there to help you with that. Sometimes it gets overwhelming,
Yeah.
but you want to find information and people that resonate with you because those people or those resources are in your life for a specific reason that might help push you towards a breakthrough in your life. And I'm just so excited for when that breakthrough comes because it's coming.
Absolutely. It's inevitable, especially I think the time that we're moving into, more and more people are awakening to the possibility of a different lifestyle and how we work. We've already seen that shifting so much since 2020. And I remain hopeful as well that we're all collectively moving towards living in greater alignment with ourselves and others. So tell us how we can connect with you, Chaz, outside of the podcast. Where can people find you? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, sure. So my website is chazzscott.com, chazzscott.com. You can find my speaking services, my coaching, my 90-day Rise and Reclaim Blueprint program, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching. And then also you can find my book, Success Starts With Them. It was an Amazon bestseller about a year and a half ago. And I worked really hard to give people information to improve the quality of of your life. And if you are not interested in purchasing the book, you can still go on my website and get the book for free, at least the first chapter. So if you go to chazzscott.com/free chapter, you can get the entire first chapter for free if you don't believe anything that's coming out of my mouth right now. I think any of those resources, you can follow me on Instagram as I promote a lot of this content to really give people hope, but also give people resources because I believe that you are on a journey, but there's people out there that can help assist you in that journey to create a magical, beautiful, impactful life.
Absolutely. You don't have to do it alone, for sure. Thank you so much, Chaz, for being here today. This was an excellent conversation. We will see you next time. In the meantime, stay aligned. Bye.